Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I will call the April 15th Select Board meeting to order. We have one member remote this evening, Malcolm McNabb. Can I make sure that you can hear me?
I can hear you, Madam Chair.
Great. So we'll be doing all of our votes by roll call. I don't believe we now have any changes to the agenda, so we will accept it as written and move to. No, it's changed. Move to announcements by the town manager.
Thank you. This meeting is being video and audio recorded. We have a good number of announcements here. The Select Board Planning Board are accepting applications for a vacant planning board seat until noon on Friday, April 24th. Those applications will go to the planning board at 2 Fairgrounds Road, and there will be a joint appointment made by those boards, Select Board and Planning Board, at the May 20th Select Board meeting. Is there anything else to say about that?
No, just that the information about where to send your application is on the town's website, under the boards and committees page.
The 2026 annual committee, board, and commission vacancy and appointment timeline and committee appointment process. Erica is going to take us through that again.
So again, this information is also on the town's website. We are currently accepting applications for the annual committee appointments. The incumbents have been notified for if their seats are coming up. We have a couple of vacancies that have come through recently, so those will be accounted into this. All applications are due on Friday, May 8th at noon for all these committees that are shown on the screen and included in the board's packet. Per our committee appointment process, we will have all the committee applications posted in the board's agenda packet for 2 weeks to allow the board and members of the public time to review all of them. And then we will hold 2 meetings, one on May 27th and one on June 3rd, to allow the applicants to come and introduce themselves to you, speak on their applications. We have them split up into 2 different groups, but obviously if one person can't come one week, they're welcome to come the next if they just let us know. And then we are having your appointments this year on June 10th, and that will give people time just to get acclimated before they start their term on July 1st.
Thank you, Erica. The Finance Committee will be holding an informational session about the May 4th, 2026 annual town meeting warrant articles tomorrow, Thursday, April 16th at 5 p.m. It is remote only. The information is on the Select Board meeting agenda. As I just mentioned, the May 4th, 2026 annual town meeting will start on Monday, May 4th at 4th.
There's a typo on there. It says 2025. Starts Monday, May 4th, 2025. Sorry.
Oh, no,
I don't even see that.
it's correct in yours on the.
Okay, well, okay, so annual town meeting, Monday, May 4th, 2026. And it starts at 4:30 at the high school. Warrant article information is online, and we have had some public outreach sessions for various articles. We have another one coming up next Tuesday, April 21st at 5. It's remote only on Article 15. That is the Somerset Needs Area Sewer Extension Appropriation. The annual town election is scheduled for Tuesday, May 19th from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. at the high school. And Bartlett Road will be closed for some stormwater drainage improvements from Surfside Road to 30 Acres Lane from Monday, April 20th to Friday, April 24th, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. And if you are in that area, I think you'll be able to get through, but you should be getting a notice from the sewer department about this. Next weekend, the weekend of April 24th, 25th, 26th, it is Arbor Day weekend, basically, and there's a seedling giveaway on Saturday, April 25th and Sunday, April 26th from 8 a.m. to noon, or when the seedlings are gone, and that takes place at the residential drop-off at the landfill. And is there a proclamation?
Actually, there's not. I didn't get anything.
Okay. We'll do that at another time, perhaps. The Community Claims Fund that it was created as part of the blade failure settlement, wind turbine blade failure settlement with GE Vernova, is launched on Monday, January 26th. People have filed claims as we understand it. There's a dedicated website with more information and instructions on how to file a claim. Claims must be filed no later than June 26th, and information again is on the town website and the select board meeting agenda. Town offices will be closed this coming Monday, April 20th, in observance of Patriots Day. There's no select board meeting next Wednesday, April 22nd. The next board meeting will be held on Wednesday, April 29th. I have one additional item that is not on the agenda. I would like to recognize someone in the room whose last formal select board meeting before he heads to another municipality is tonight, our finance director, Brian Turbitt. I really want to thank Brian for his service to the town and the many improvements he has made to strengthen the town's financial position, including audits, which were a shambles when Brian arrived, and a bond rating that only 14 other municipalities in the state have achieved. And that bond rating was viewed by many people to be unachievable by Nantucket. And with a lot of hard work and leadership, Brian brought us to that point. Brian will be at the 2026 annual town meeting, and he has agreed to be available to help close out a few pending matters, but we appreciate his service very much. And I don't know if anybody else wants to say anything, but I would want to give him a little round of applause.
If I might, I just want to thank Brian in a particular area that I've been involved with for years is housing. The complexity of our financing of affordable and year-round housing has multiplied dramatically the level of complexity. And Brian has really done a great job of navigating complex deals with multiple funding stacks, bond counsel, borrowing. And we wouldn't be where we are on the housing had it not been for Brian. So I want to express that.
I also want to thank Brian. Brian, over my term, especially in the beginning, you were around to help explain some pretty complex topics to me, like residential tax exemption, et cetera. And you were always available. And I really appreciate that. And we wish you all the best in your new position. Thank you.
Yeah, you shouldn't leave. I've been through a few renditions, and the town is in unbelievably great shape because you've been here, and it's been very much appreciated.
Malcolm, go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to, the same thing. I think I've learned a great deal from Brian. He was always there to answer questions. I can remember years ago when our finances was just an absolute mess and shambles. And I congratulate him, and I think we'll all miss him.
Thank you, Brian. And for the record, I didn't know they were going to do that. Next up, do we have any opening select board announcements or comments? Okay. I do have an update on public comment questions from April 1st. There were a couple of questions. I will read those to you now, and they are also posted on the town's website. On April 1st, Amy Eldridge inquired about paving plans for Milestone Road between Nobadeer Farm Road and New South Road. The town's response: town staff met with Mass DOT representatives to discuss Milestone Road on Tuesday, April 7th, to review the existing condition of the roadway. Staff will continue to work with DOT to develop a plan for maintenance of the roadway, which will include repaving some sections of the roadway from the Milestone Rotary to New South Road. This maintenance effort is being coordinated with other ongoing projects in mind, including reconstruction of the Milestone Rotary, improvements at the intersection of Milestone and Nobadeer Farm Roads, and widening of Milestone Road from the Milestone Rotary to New South Road. Next, both Mary Warrow and Rick Atherton inquired about Article 73 of the 2026 annual town meeting warrant. The town's response: Article 73 as drafted complies with the terms and provisions of Chapter 67 1E. Chapter 67 1E provides that leasing or licensing of town-owned coastal land to a non-governmental body for erosion control protection purposes shall be subject to approval by a vote of an annual or special town meeting. It does not require that the town meeting approve of the actual lease or license agreement for a project located on town-owned coastal land, but rather authorizes the act of leasing or licensing the property. A town meeting vote approving Article 73 will authorize the select board to lease or license certain town-owned land along Baxter Road as described therein for erosion control protection purposes on such terms and conditions as the select board deems appropriate, subject to and consistent with any terms and conditions ordered by the Conservation Commission. The select board acting on behalf of the town may hold real estate for the public use of the town and may dispose of such real property or real property interest as duly authorized pursuant to General Law C 43. Article 73 authorizes the select board to exercise its power to convey a real property of interest in this property. In this case, a lease or license. Furthermore, this article also provides that the terms of a lease or license agreement shall be consistent with terms and conditions ordered by the Conservation Commission. Therefore, the select board may not agree to any lease or license agreement that is not consistent with the orders of the Conservation Commission. This lease or license agreement, once negotiated by the select board, shall be voted on by the select board at a public meeting and does not require an additional town meeting vote. The wording of Article 73 is consistent with Article 81 from the 2025 annual town meeting and reflects standard language used in Nantucket for real estate matters, allowing the select board to negotiate agreements within its authority. And again, those are both posted on the town's website. Next up, we have public comment for items that are otherwise not on our agenda for discussion this evening. Just please limit any comments to a maximum of 3 minutes. Good evening.
Good evening.
Just please state your name for the record.
Yes, ma'am. JP Karen, 16 Waydale Road. My name is JP Karen. I live and reside at 16 Waydale Road. I am the COO and plant manager for Waste Options Nantucket.
JP, just pull that mic down a little bit closer. No, thanks.
I am here today to put on record some of the facts that have surrounded the recent comments and allegations that were brought up during our planning board meeting. I want to give you guys a brief history of who I am and where our family comes from. The last 7 years, we have resided at 16.5 Waydale. I was a big part of purchasing that house for me and my family. It was a major part for the company of acquiring the house because it suited the needs of not just my family, but also the company. To give you a breakdown of my family, I manage the daily operations at the solid waste recycling facility and landfill. My wife and son both work under me as employees of the company. My wife helps out in the scale, which many of you know. My son helps run equipment. My daughter Lola is currently in college and on the dean's list for both semesters of her freshman year, which is quite an accomplishment. My Callie J is a mini-me. Not only has she excelled at Nantucket Public Schools, she is also an honor roll principal's list for her academics achievements. She has also committed her time to the community with over 60 hours of community service this year so far. She is also working in the planning department or in the permitting department at Nantucket PD, meat and fish as a barista, plus she babysits for 2 well-known families on the island. I just wanted to come here and kind of clear some of the air to let you know that we are members of this community. We have been for a long time, and we plan on being around for a lot longer. We really appreciate the planning board's time that they took with approving our permit for for company housing, and really appreciate everything that this body has done for us and also done for our operations at the landfill. We are human. We're very much part of this community. We give up our time. We do the things that not many people want to do. I urge anybody to take the time to get to know us, to give us that chance to show who we really are. We may play in the dirt, but I promise you, we are not dirty people. We do our best for this community. We try to have the goal is to better what was once broken. I am not perfect. None of our employees are. There have been things that have happened in the past. We try to get on top and resolve them as quickly as possible. I thank you for everything.
Thank you. Amy?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I just wanted to thank the Public Safety Building for allowing me to host our state auditor this past Saturday. It was a great turnout. It was nice to see members from FinCom, Capcom, Select Board, and Land Bank attend the meet and greet with Diana DiZaglio. It was very informative. I know there was many events happening this Saturday, but we had a nice core, about 30 people, a nice core group of our community here, and it was very informative. And I hope to have her here on Island again for those that missed out. But I greatly appreciate the Public Safety Building for accommodating us here on Saturday. So thank you.
Hi, my name is Hadley Dutra, and I want to start by saying how much I appreciate the work that this board does and all the boards on Nantucket. And the reason I'm here tonight is to talk about proper procedure on public boards on this island and how all of us know who serve on boards, when we don't agree with something on a personal level, that still cannot affect our decisions on those boards when it comes to serving our role on those boards. And that is what I'm here to talk about tonight. I appreciate that members of the select board stepped into a recent Board of Health meeting to caution against an open meeting violation. It is these obvious and embarrassing strays from ethics and proper procedure on this board that I'm here to talk about tonight. And as Tom Dixon said recently, I don't want to have to do this. But we've been following this project since the newspaper article came out in September saying that the school was going to install an asphalt track, and have since gotten to a level where I'll feel very good about it. The issue at stake is very simple. A very personal agenda by a member of this board, meaning the Board of Health, is driving public policy against the school's project. The first red flag happened when the Board of Health didn't accept the Weston and Sampson study commissioned by the school committee. That study was commissioned in order to make sure the turf was safe. The result of that study was that the turf is safe, and I quote, "All regulated PFAS and unregulated PFAS concentrations reported are well below the Mass DEP drinking water and soil exposure standards, and the level was marked as non-detect for PFAS, which is as close as you can get to PFAS free, especially as we have PFAS in rain and PFAS on Mount Everest." At that point, after the school committee voted in favor of this project, after it was deemed safe, and after an independent study was performed, at that point, this project should have advanced through the proper channels to the floor of town meeting. But when you don't like turf, you don't like that data. So instead of accepting that data for what it is, accurate, certain members of the Board of Health have brought in this issue into their sphere. They brought in speakers citing data about crumb rubber turf, essentially misleading and scaring the public about PFAS, when in fact there is no crumb rubber in the school's project. It does not exist. There was an open meeting violation with an unagended motion on the turf. And now, the reason I'm here tonight, just 20 days shy of town meeting, the Board of Health has agended a motion tomorrow asking for testing and results that by all scientific standards are unattainable. Many people have written and verbally asked for a recusal on this project by the vice chair. That has not happened. There is evidence of this and needs to be checked. Please uphold ethical standards on our public boards. Thank you.
Thank you. Campbell?
Good evening, Campbell Sutton. I too would like to say thank you, Brian. I agree with Matt. I'm sad to see him go, and it'll be interesting to see who takes his place because it'll be big shoes to fill. I'd also like to thank this gentleman over here, excuse me, for coming in tonight. I think it's unfortunate that he felt that he had to explain himself, having been at the planning board meeting. I did feel like there was a little bit of fear mongering going on for what is known as, I believe it's neighborhood employee housing, whereby employees are, the number of employees in a house exceed what would normally be there, right? And because that's considered somewhat new, though it's not, but is considered somewhat new in neighborhoods, a lot of single family families are having difficulty with the numbers of people that are moving in or the numbers of people that are in a structure. And so I just like to thank him for coming in and apologize that he felt he needed to. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Graham Vesey. And I guess I'm coming to you guys tonight for help, maybe. I'm curious if the select board or the town council would be willing to help clarify to the community because we are very confused right now. We need someone to help explain what is going on with the Board of Health motions. No one understands if a vote on the proposed moratorium can happen on Thursday. None of us know if nobody is in jeopardy of being closed on Friday or frankly at all this season, let alone the entire school project. We are also confused if turf system applies to the golf simulator at Maya Comet, potential padel courts going in NRSA. Does it apply if someone uses it privately in their home? All of this stuff is not clear to anyone, and a possible vote is happening on Thursday. This would impact hundreds of families that use these facilities. I am just asking if town council or anyone can shed light on what is allowed to happen on Thursday. The public deserves to know. We found out about this yesterday, and a possible moratorium taking place tomorrow seems like it would need a bit more time to discuss. Thank you.
Hi, Kate Garrett. Thank you. For the moratorium that was proposed for the Board of Health meeting tomorrow, I do have some concerns in terms of the level of testing, the standard being 0. For those of us who know anything about science, that is not science. That's not a level that anything that exists on this island right now is ever tested to. Quite frankly, it's unattainable and it's not realistic or achievable in practice today. So that is of concern to me, and I would suggest and really hope that that your board can take a look into that standard that's being set, that unrealistic standard. As you know, Graham said, to kind of echo on her point, as a parent who has kids playing at Nobody or Turf 7 days a week, I'm very confused what that means. Do they go to practice on Friday if that moratorium is passed? I had many parents reach out to me today. I think we really need to understand the hundreds of families that this potentially reaches. It seems brazen. It's very concerning. It's confusing, and families are very concerned and confused. So just some clarity on that would be great. And just to again reiterate that any standard of 0 is an impossible level to reach for any test in science. Thank you.
Hey, Vince Murphy on behalf of the school committee. I just want to provide one comment on this. I too have read the motion. There are some extraordinarily concerning points. What it says about education and how we value our young isn't there for what this Board of Health are trying to do. They're claiming it is. But my real problem sorry, I've said it on many different levels here. I have a scientific background. Some of the scientific propositions that are being put forward by the Board of Health are not based in science. They're just not scientific at all. They're not in, there's no reasonable basis. It's not even pseudoscience. It's science fiction. They are making it up. Thank you.
I have one hand up online, but I just don't want to let in a Zoom bomber. Basically.
I'll allow them to talk and be ready to resend quickly. If it's-
Okay. Michelle Nadir.
I'd like to talk about
No, we've already heard from that person before.
Okay. There's no new business. I just want to make one quick comment. That when regulations are being enacted, it does require a noticed public hearing. Approval of minutes, warrants, and pending contracts.
Move approval of all four.
All those in favor? By roll call. Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee, Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you for approving that. We did want to just point out two contracts that are on the higher end of things. One of them is some stormwater repairs on Washington Street. And I think we have someone from Hazen and Sawyer online to just give a very quick overview of that. It is going to be a project that will cause some traffic issues on Washington Street. This is right near the Marine Department. Is Dan on?
Yep. Hey, Libby, I'm here.
Thank you.
Yeah, so high level overview, there are some old corrugated metal pipes that are constantly in tidally influenced salt water there. They are completely rotted out. The structures they're attached to, catch basins, manholes, a lot of them are failing as well. And it puts Washington Street at risk for, several pretty sizable sinkholes between about where the Harbor Master building is and the finance building. So we'll be replacing a couple 100 feet of pipe through there, a couple catch basins and a couple manholes, but all contained in the roadway, the right of way there, not extending to outfalls or any other area.
Thank you very much. And sure, Charles.
Manager for the sewer department.
Mike.
I just want to point out that that contract number seems high due to the fact that there are $300,000, $350,000 in allowances that probably won't be used in the contract, and that includes asbestos pipe removal, excessive dewatering, and unsuitable soil that might be removed from the site that wouldn't be able to be used at the landfill. So I just wanted to point out that the real bid number is about 2/3 of that total.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. That was very helpful. Chuck Larson, is Chuck on to give a quick over?
Yes.
He's online.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi. So also included in the contracts is a project to help the town assemble a stormwater master plan. Building on the data that we've been collecting over the last 5 years with the video inspection of the stormwater system. We have a maintenance management system that we've implemented with the sewer department. It includes the stormwater. We want to add the information there and add additional information that might need to be added to the system so we can do a complete townwide analysis of the stormwater needs. And this builds on the momentum started with the stormwater bylaw and the increased emphasis on improving the stormwater system. Also included with this is a downtown area focused master plan just on stormwater and the drainage that goes into the downtown area and then exits through the outfalls. And this builds on the need of improving conditions down there, resolve flooding, harbor water quality, and also addressing the needs for, long-term flooding, coastal resilience, and things like that. It will include the consideration of the needs for pump stations as well. Another key element of this project is helping the town prepare the needs for a stormwater division or what's required in terms of being able to outsource the work that's going to really be needed. So Hazen and Sawyer is going to put together this staffing plan, which will have recommendations for what that might need to look like, how that works with the existing resources, perhaps in the sewer department and or DPW. And to really get that information down on paper so we can bring it forward with recommendations.
Thank you. Burton Balkind has his hand up, maybe with a question.
Thank you, Don. Burton Balkind speaking on behalf of myself. I just was curious if this project is consistent with the coastal resiliency plan that the town has been developing. Thank you.
So yes, this project works along with the coastal resilience plan, but it's also looking at needs if projects in the coastal resilience plan are delayed. Stormwater is going to be a need with or without, barrier projects. We want to address the infrastructure needs and the flooding, but short answer, yes, the work's coordinated.
Thank you. Anyone have any other questions? We're good.
Well, and we've also, there are grant assurances from the airport, and that's part of this vote, correct? Yep.
Yes.
So they're all in there. And so whenever we do the grant assurances, I always have to point out that they're pretty one way, that it's saying that we're going to do everything right. And then, and it's always kind of funny to me, but there's a statement in here. The Airport Commission shall maintain a fee and rental structure for all airport property, facilities, and services. Such said fee and rental structure shall be constructed so as to make the airport as self-sustaining as possible under the circumstances existing at the airport. Well, they're holding us like very tight, and then they say, well, we're going to do the best we can. And I know they're going to argue and say they're not doing that, et cetera. But it's just funny in that document that that they're holding our feet to the fire, but then they're leaving a little out for themselves. And I just find that kind of a little annoying. We want the money, we want the money for the airport. We want the grants. So and we've been told that we can't adjust them, that they just won't give us the money. So we sign them. But I think, there's a lot of things in here that says the airport's going to do this and that and the other thing. And if they don't, we, the town, are the backstop. And, I just think it's important that they've done a good job recently and we haven't had to be the backstop, but it wasn't all that long ago that we were. So anyway, so I just, whenever I sign these under duress. So anyway.
Thank you. I had to sign them.
You do. All right, then you can sign them for me under duress.
Next up, we have consent items, gift donation acceptances for the fire department and planning and land use services. Brooke, do you want to read?
Sure. Yep. For the fire department, a gift donation of 2 battery operated saws, a miter saw, and a table saw valued at approximately $2,300 from Island Lumber Company for training and emergency response. And to the Planning and Land Use Services Department, plus a gift donation of $10,000 from Maury Bayberry LLC for pedestrian and infrastructure improvements in connection with the rear lot subdivision special permit at 16 Bayberry Lane. I move that we accept all gifts and donations for their designated purposes with thanks to the donors.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb. He's muted.
He's saying aye, but he's muted.
I can see that you're saying aye.
Second. Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Dunhill, aye. That carries unanimously. Next up, we have citizen departmental committee requests and reports. The first item is a presentation on proposed remote town meeting legislation, and I will recognize Sarah Alger, our town moderator, to introduce our speaker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, Sarah Alger, Town Moderator. This is informational only, just because I felt like the board should be kind of up to speed on what's happening statewide in terms of remote access at town meeting. And because people ask me all the time, hey, I have this, why can't I vote from home? It's very complicated. So I thought it would be helpful if we actually heard what's going on and what would be required. So I turned, of course, to Wayland, because Wayland always seems to be out kind of on the bleeding edge of all this technology. They're the people who pioneered the electronic voting, which, you know, at the time we thought, how could we ever do this? And now we think, how could we ever do it without it? The chair of their subcommittee, which is called ELVIS, the Electronic Voting Implementation Subcommittee, is Dave Bernstein. He has a BSEE degree from MIT and has designed a lot of software and commercially successful computers and microprocessors. And he's just, well, very overqualified for what he's doing for Wayland. And we're lucky to have him available. And I'm going to just turn this over to him to give his presentation. They're working through the state for the legislation that would be necessary down the road. I mean, this is a ways down the road. This isn't town meeting 2026 for us.
No, I think it's a good education for all the people that ask.
Thank you.
Good evening, Dave.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for making the time available. This was very helpful. And I will ask for your help at the end. We're going to talk about remote participation in town meeting. Just some context, Wayland has about 10,000 registered voters, but the average town meeting, only 600 or so appear, in contrast with town elections where 2,100 people show up. So right away, you can see there's a pretty big participation gap in terms of people who actually care enough to vote in elections, but can't make it to town meeting. This is typical of towns across the state. Acton League of Women Voters published a study of 5 towns. They're all in the 2 to 3% range in terms of people who actually appear at town meeting. As Sarah mentioned, we started on electronic voting back in 2011. The objectives were speed, accuracy, and privacy, especially the idea of having a secret ballot vote. And today I'm happy to say that there are more than 70 towns using electronic voting in their town meetings. So this has really taken off and it's really been helpful. But the minute we did it in Wayland, voters came to us and said, wait a second, you know, we can shop and bank from the internet. Why can't we participate in town meeting from the internet? And it wasn't for random reasons. Some people have disabilities. They can't drive at night. People have young children at home. They can't be away on a school night. Some people are caregivers. Some people have jobs that make it so they can't possibly attend. And I know that's a real issue on the island. So our moderator basically asked the committee that did electronic voting to investigate. It took us several years to understand what it would take to get from this configuration, namely a voting system with on-premises handsets that do voting, to this configuration where people with tablets and smartphones via the internet would be able to not just vote, but listen and speak, debate, and then vote. So we identified 4 technical impediments, and I'll go through them one at a time so that you understand. The first one is the obvious one. Who'd be crazy enough to pass votes over the internet? The internet's a cesspool. How do we know that we can securely pass votes there? Well, the issue is that every vote at town meeting is resolved in real time. So we can introduce an audit mechanism that enables you to verify that your vote was correctly recorded before the moderator declares the vote to be final. So how does this work? Well, before town meeting, if you want to participate remotely, you check in with the town clerk, just like you would on premises. You state your name and address. You're given a piece of paper with a voter code and a password on it. And when it comes time for the first session of town meeting, you go to the same web page It's a web application. There's no software to download, works on your tablet, works on your phone. You go to the right URL and just enter your voter code and your password and click check-in. When you do that, you're in a video conversation with a member of the town staff, and you conduct another recheck-in, just like you would town meeting premises. State your name, state your address. The only difference is that we capture a picture of your face during the check-in process that we retain just for the duration of that one session, and then we expunge it. I'll explain to you how we use that picture. So what's it look like? How do we make it simple? Well, everybody has their phone or their tablet. There's a set of buttons across the bottom that tell you what you can do at this particular point in the meeting. Right now, we're in discussion on Article 11's main motion. We get real-time transcription of whatever's being said and an identification of who's doing the speaking. By the way, if you have any questions or concerns, just stop me on the spot, and I'll be happy to answer. So here we see that Robert Smith is speaking, and he's addressing the moderator. So everybody sees this, and that right away helps some people with disabilities be able to keep track of what's going on. If you want to speak, you push the speak button. And when you do, you're presented with an array of options, the legal reasons why you might want to speak at town meeting. Speak in favor of the motion, against the motion, ask a question, terminate debate, offer an amendment, or make a point of order. Or you change your mind and withdraw your request. So the minute you do that, the moderator sees your request. In this case, the person whose shoulder we're looking over said, I want to amend the current motion. So we're told that our request to amend is awaiting moderator recognition, and we can withdraw that request if we wish. Meanwhile, the moderator sees this. She sees or he sees all of the speaker requests in chronological order and why they wish to speak. So we're looking over Angela Merkel's shoulder. Here's the amendment that was submitted, and we see the chronology here. Also, we see whether the person making the request was local or remote. Also, we see whether there are any points of order or calling the question that were made. So this is an example of one of the concerns, addressing the concerns that some people have. How is a moderator going to manage a meeting that has not just a couple hundred, but maybe a couple thousand people? Well, we can provide tools that make it much easier for the moderator to manage that kind of meeting. And this is one example of it. So here we are, we're the person who submitted the request to make an amendment. The moderator has now authorized me to speak. So we're prompted to offer our amendment, and we see a countdown clock. So not too different than what I saw here with people making public comment, making it very easy to speak to town meeting. Everybody at home who's participating remotely can also look at the speaker queue and see who's in the queue to speak. So you might say, well, I don't really need to speak to this issue because I know that Emmanuel's going to speak to it and he feels the same way about it that I do. So that helps with the efficiency of not repeating arguments. So here we are back to the moderator's console. We're on Article 11 main motion. There's been a debate. The moderator now decides to initiate a vote. So does so by clicking the vote button. Everybody who is remote then sees this on their handset. Article 11 main motion, yes or no, or abstain if you want to retract your vote. What's your vote? Click the button to vote, just like you would on a handset at town meeting. So the minute you click the vote, you voted yes, you see the confirmation that your vote was received. Okay. So one concern that people have is, what if there's an outage? What if there's a car runs into a pole and knocks down internet support for, I don't know, a quarter of the island? What do you do? How do you know? Well, the answer is that we designed the system so that the remote participation webpage is constantly sending check-in messages to the voting system. And as a result, the moderator can be continuously informed of the number of remote participants who inadvertently become disconnected, not because they clicked the leave button, but because they were disconnected. So before town meeting, the moderator establishes a continuation policy that says what we're going to do if more than X% of remote participants are inadvertently or involuntarily disconnected. That could be 10%, that could be 25%. The continuation policy could be, we'll start again the next day. It could be, we'll wait 1 hour so that people can get in their cars and come down to town meeting. But that's something that should be decided and publicized ahead of time. The point is whether it's a failure because of a power failure or one of the suppliers went down, or even a denial of service attack by someone trying to disrupt the meeting, we would detect it, and we would enable you to recover from it effectively. So the point I already started to discuss, which is how to secure votes over the internet. What's unique about town meeting is that every vote is resolved in real time. So as a result, after a vote, but before the moderator declares it final, we can display on a public web page every voter's secret voter code, the thing that's on the piece of paper you got from the town clerk when you registered, and it shows the vote you received. So you can right away determine whether or not your vote was correctly received. Also, you can see the arithmetic adding up the yes and no's of the remote votes, which the moderator will announce. So we can protect against two things. One, individual votes being tampered with, or two, that the vote that the moderator announces is inconsistent with the actual vote, because the votes add, you see here, a yes increments the yes count, but not the no vote. Very easy to detect errors in the arithmetic if someone's trying to hack it. So the bottom line is we have this audit mechanism that everybody can use, and every voter can audit every vote. Because some voters might not do that, we add to the security by saying that the moderator can designate auditors, people that he or she trusts, that agree to audit every one of their votes, and their discrepancies are reported by text message. So it's a reporting mechanism that's completely outside the voting system, the town meeting system, so that, again, very, very difficult to overcome from a hacking point of view. People at home can push the audit button. If you're remote, push the audit button, you see the table, you scroll to the line with your vote, verify that it's correct. If it's not, you report a discrepancy that's reported to the moderator. So we have the ability to detect any discrepancy in the voting. Wayland implemented something like this with its on-premises voting system. We've done maybe 10 audits over the last 15 years. Every one of them was 100% accurate. So this is a very effective system for detecting hacking over the internet. Proxy voting is another problem. What is that? Well, proxy voting is when one person votes on behalf of another. If someone else goes to town meeting and goes to the check-in station and says they're Dave Bernstein at 25 Gleason Lane, unless someone nearby notices and happens to know me, I can authenticate as that person can authenticate. They're a proxy voter. Well, it's a lot easier to do that with people who are remote because we're allowing remote participation. So that's why we capture a picture of you, of your face, when you check in remotely for remote participation. So randomly throughout the meeting, when there's no voting going on, members of town staff randomly connect to remote participants. They see the picture of the remote participant when they checked in. They see what they're looking at in real time on their video monitor, and they can see whether it's the same person who's still there or not. So this is a way to detect proxy voting. Now, how does it stop it? Proxy voting is voting fraud with very stiff penalties. So anyone who is caught doing this is going to be facing a serious set of consequences. So being able to have 2 or 3 members of town staff check literally several thousand remote participants over the course of a meeting deters anyone from trying to pull this off. So I've reviewed with you how we propose to implement this as basically web access to the town voting system that supports listening, speaking, and voting. It's not just voting, it's full participation. And I've explained to you how a disruptive adversary that tries to bring down the system, or a vote tampering adversary who attempts to submit votes or tamper with votes, or someone who proxy votes, how we can overcome all of those technical impediments because of the unique nature of town meeting. So that was the hard part, we thought. How do we overcome those technical impediments? The other problem is that it's not legal. Remote participation in representative town meeting is legal, was made legal as part of the COVID emergency regulations, but it's still not legal for open town meeting. So I've spent the last couple of years, as have my friends, basically talking to towns like yours about this, giving this presentation, getting feedback. What you just saw has been significantly improved by feedback we've gotten from these presentations. And we have submitted legislation to the legislature to make it legal. So I'm not going to go over all of these. Quite a few of them, in fact, have been referred to study. But I will point out that we have 2 items of legislation, 2197 and 2129, that are currently before the Senate Ways and Means Committee. So they've come quite a long way. And our legislative strategy now is twofold. One is to forge a compromise in Ways and Means Committee to authorize remote participation in 5 pilot towns. So not statewide, just 5 pilot towns. Let us get started. Let us prove that it works. Let us demonstrate that it works. That would be Wayland and Concord, both of whom have home rule petitions, and the next 3 towns whose select boards or town meetings authorize remote participation. Senator Eldridge, our state senator, is driving that. In parallel, Representative Gentile is submitting today an amendment to the budget, an outside section that would authorize the same pilot program. And so basically we're asking the legislature, let us get started. We don't need any funding. We just need permission. We will go recruit someone to build the software. We'll test it. We'll refine it. That will take multiple years. We'll be holding mock town meetings, test town meetings, and anybody who wants to see it can come see it. But the idea is by approving this, we can get started and give towns across the state the option to re-enfranchise their voters who currently can't participate because of kids at home or childcare responsibilities or caregiving responsibilities. We've also started up a grassroots campaign. We have a webpage, getremotetm.com. There's a video of the presentation I'm giving you right now that you can look at. I'm a little less breathless in that particular presentation. But we're doing everything we can to educate people that this is technically and financially feasible, something that most people don't understand. Sarah said that lots of people complain about not being able to participate in town meeting. They just don't know that if we just made this legal, we could address that. We could give you the option to allow your folks to participate remotely. So that's the system we want to build. That's the end of the agenda. Happy to take questions.
Questions? Brooke?
This may be a question for Town Council, Lauren Goldberg. In our governance structure, were the community to ask us to do this and we wanted to move forward, would it require a town meeting vote to opt to participate in this, or could the select board make that decision on our own?
Hi, Lauren.
Thank you. In order to request special legislation, you would need a vote of town meeting to authorize that. To be involved with a test, which is not really a town meeting, not actually voting at town meeting using a test system. I don't think you would need a vote of town meeting first, but you would, the moderator would obviously have to get town meetings buy-in in order to kind of test it out at the same time as you were doing an actual town meeting. But in my opinion, in order to file that special legislation, you would need a town meeting vote.
That special legislation would only be required if you did it in advance of an approved pilot program, correct?
Hi, Dave. This is
Madam Chair, for you.
Oh, yep. Go ahead, Lauren.
Yes. Depending on what the legislation says, there could be options to, opt in without a town meeting vote, but until we see legislation that authorizes that, we're kind of stuck with the traditional viewpoint on it. Clearly, the legislature has the right to create a statewide law that would allow any town that wants to opt in or to create a pilot program. In the meantime, I think it's a watch and wait, and I know that Mr. Bernstein has been doing that for quite some time. It's interesting to see how it's developing at the state level. I do know more and more towns are interested in remote, open town meetings. So it is definitely a subject of discussion, even though it hasn't made it, through the legislative process, even though it's been pending for a while.
Thank you, Lauren. Tom?
Hi, Dave. This is Tom Dixon. I have a quick question. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but a couple years ago, we had some debate on a potential home rule petition that actually was passed, and I believe it was like 187 to 186. And I'm curious what would happen if, say, the audited codes that folks had post the meeting were to say, a handful of them were to say, in this example, were to say, hey, that wasn't my vote. Would that materially change, or would there be some kind of protest law? I know it's kind of specific, but I could just see that happening on a close vote, that somebody might have clicked the wrong button. Would that stand? Have you thought about that at all? And if so, how do you resolve that?
Yes, we have. So first of all, the designated auditor mechanism is one tool that the moderator has to determine whether or not there really has been interference. But also, when you click the button that reports a discrepancy, a screenshot of your handset is sent in to the moderator. So the moderator will be able to see exactly what you did. So that makes it very difficult for somebody to press yes and claim that they voted no, because a screenshot of their handset will show that they voted yes.
Dave, would you mind stop sharing your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure.
That's okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I have a couple,
Matt?
if that's all right. One is, how would this deal with one issue voters? Do you have any concern with people, like sometimes we have town meeting and everyone shows up for one issue, they all vote and they walk out? Do you have any concern that that would increase that type of pattern?
I don't know for sure. I will point out that we see that now with current town meetings where people, get on their phones and call people to come in and vote for one item and then they leave. So I'm sure some of that would happen. I guess for that kind of question and all of the question, my answer is maybe it will, but is that a good reason to deny participation in so many members of our town that can't participate because we require physical on-site premises? So yeah, there might be some more of that, but is that really a good reason not to do it?
Yeah, well, and I might argue it might be a good reason because you have people who show up and have to listen to everyone else and then they may change their mind, et cetera. But the other one you talked about, representative town meeting, have they used this? Did I get that wrong? They have? How many,
Yes, they
what's the
have.
largest number of people that have used it?
I don't know the largest number. I've spent a fair amount of time with the moderator of Plymouth, who's very, very happy with this. But most representative town meetings have around 100 or 200 representatives. So they're much smaller than an open town meeting, best case.
Right. All right, so that's,
Lauren has her hand up.
yeah, and one more, please. That leads me, I own a sandwich shop. We take online orders and we didn't take it for a number of years because everyone wants their sandwich at noon. And so what we finally did it. And what we found we have to do, we have to throttle back the number of orders to each 10 or 15-minute interval. We can only handle 15 orders every 15 minutes or something like that. And so has there been any concern that if you have 2,000, 3,000 people, that the moderator is going to have, 300 hands up, and are you going to have to go through those 300 hands? Has anyone thought about if you design this, how would you throttle it based on your demand? Demand to speak, demand to vote, all the different aspects.
So certainly if a moderator decided for his or her town that they wanted some limit imposed, the software could certainly limit that. But I will point out that while remote participation means there will be a lot more participants, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a lot more points of view. So as people are speaking, people who might want to say the same thing would not necessarily speak. They wouldn't have to. And in fact, it becomes a part of the culture you have to build that says, please don't waste town meetings time by making the same point that's already been made. So there's some things that have to change a little bit for people to not be repetitious. But the key point is lots more participants don't necessarily mean lots more points of view.
Thank you. Lauren?
Yes, so I just wanted to share that during COVID, I worked with a number of representative town meetings, towns that had remote town meetings. And I do think it was a challenge for the moderator. And I've already talked about this previously with Dave. He already has heard this. And so I think whatever mechanism is ultimately developed to make this possible, there are going to be a number of adjustments that need to be made for town meeting to feel like town meeting, and to run like town meeting. And I hope that Dave's right, that we're not going to have everybody wanting to say what they think about something when someone else has already said it. But in my experience, during COVID, that really didn't play out like that. And it could be because it's a representative town meeting and people are used to having their say and they wanted to, but there was a lot of people that wanted to speak, and a lot of them did say the same thing. We developed in each of the towns that I worked with, we developed kind of, another set of procedures for the moderator to use to manage the people that wanted, that wanted to speak using Zoom at the time. We also managed different procedures to allow people that didn't have access to computers to be able to call in, and we had a procedure for dealing with that as well. I think, just like every town meeting, every open town meeting, every representative town meeting has its own personality, and its own way of doing things. And that's gonna be a challenge to figure out, how do we preserve, kind of the procedures and the feel and of town meeting that we have, and also allow participation in a way that, as Dave's saying, is bringing in people who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity. I don't think the legislation can do that. I think it can create the opportunity for towns to use this, but I do believe, just like, you've seen, I'm sure, town meeting time, which is a manual for how to run town meetings for moderators. And I'm sure there's going to have to be, if this does come to fruition at some point, there's going to have to be development of appropriate, mechanisms to manage that, so that it can happen. And, I've been to meetings where there's 4,000 or 5,000 people. And that's a challenge, just because there's that many people in a number of spaces, and having to deal with that. But these are challenges that, I think we will meet. As Dave indicated, years ago, there was no electronic voting, and a lot of towns were very reticent about heading in that direction. And now they can't imagine town meeting without it. So, when we get closer to a legislative resolution, I think there's going to be a lot of work to do, not just at the state level, but at the local level. And we'll see where it goes. I'm happy to answer questions, obviously, about those other experiences, and to share with you some of the documents that were developed, but it doesn't have to be now. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Yeah, Dave or Lauren, do you know how Secretary Galvin's office feels about this potentiality?
I have sent detailed descriptions of how this all works to Secretary Galvin's office and his director, Michelle Tassinari. I have not received any negative commentary. I've also briefed an assistant attorney general who is very involved in her town meeting in Reading, Massachusetts, and she came away convinced as well.
So I work. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead,
Madam Chair.
I was just going to comment that I don't want anyone to take away from this presentation that we know exactly how this is going to work if we get approved to start building it. The whole point is to get started, to test it with a couple of towns, let everybody look at it and watch. And I'm sure that we'll find problems that we have not anticipated. That was certainly the case with wireless electronic voting. What we started with and what we ended with were not the same thing. So what we're asking for here, and where we could really use your support with your legislatures, is let us get started. Let us develop a first cut that you can look at. You don't have to use it if you don't like it. It may be another 5 years before it evolves into something where your town decides that, yeah, we'd like to try that. But we're just asking to get started. We're not asking to impose anything on you or anyone else.
Okay, thank you. Campbell?
Madam
Hi.
Chair.
Thank you, Campbell Sutton. I just had a question similar to Matt's in terms of, because we do have almost every town meeting, we have some huge number of people that arrive for a particular issue and then they leave. And this just seems to expand that opportunity. But I think Matt asked that question. So I just have a question because I know it comes up a lot at town meeting with the remote pieces that we have. And there are people that are concerned that their vote is tracked to who they are. And I don't know what that means in the end, but with the way he was saying to Tom's question in terms of if you were trying to challenge your vote, like I didn't make that vote or something, and somehow it's matched to your face, that's matched to your code that got you in. So I was just sort of wondering if there is any concern about that kind of vote tracking to individuals. Thank you.
Lauren?
We will be extremely careful to prevent that from happening. Maintaining the anonymity of the vote is critical. That's why you get a secret voter code. That's why only the town clerk knows the correlation between the secret voting code and the real person. So none of the mechanisms that we have discussed today would allow anyone who intercepted stuff to be able to reverse engineer your vote.
I have the town clerk at the mic.
Thanks, Dave, for this presentation, which I've had the chance to see before, and it's just amazing all the work that Wayland has done, and thank you so much. I really do appreciate you. And I just want to say to Campbell's question that at town meeting with the devices, we always know the devices are numbered by the our provider, Option Technologies. So we always are able to know if somebody doesn't turn one in, oh, unit 1127 is Joe Schmo. We can always tell that, but we never know the vote. It is never tied to an individual. Even the technology company does not know that. So I want to assure people that. So as to tonight's presentation, it's very interesting, and obviously there's so many machinations and logistical things that we have a great concern about. But I know certain things could be worked out. I know that Wayland is on the cutting edge, and Nantucket would like to be too. And it's years away. We'll see what the legislature says. Maybe some towns will test it out. Maybe ours will be one of them. I don't know. But one of my big overriding concerns is accessibility, which this is supposed to help with. The people at home with small children, somebody with a severe access or disability, the elderly. But I can't see the legislature approving it that certain towns, Nantucket, Wayland, whoever can do this and implement it, and other towns, for a variety of reasons, cannot. Maybe it can be done here and it can't be done in Barnstable and Braintree. How is that equal for people that need accessibility in those towns in the Commonwealth? So I don't see how that would be fair unless the state approved and budgeted it for all. Otherwise, it would, to me, be an unfunded mandate. And I know, and Dave has explained that, the technology will be developed by the companies, for free in order to the hopes to sell them to the towns. But there are other costs involved. I think there will be a lot of labor costs involved. And I think it will be a very difficult job for a lone moderator to be moderating, maybe 1,000 voters. I can't quite imagine it, but I am open-minded. I know things can change. None of us imagined remote meetings, 6 years ago. But my overriding concern is, unless it's approved and mandated for every town in the Commonwealth that has open meeting, which is over 200, how is it fair to the people that need it in towns that don't implement it? That would be my question to Dave. Thank you.
It's fair because the only way to develop something like this and make it secure and easy to use is to do so incrementally and iteratively. This is a principle of modern software engineering. You don't build some massive thing, test it to death, and then let 500,000 people try it simultaneously. It never, ever works. The only way to make this work, even if the legislation was approved statewide, we would never deploy it statewide. We would start small. We would start with high school students and senior citizens testing mock town meeting, refining with the moderator until we thought we could try it with maybe half a dozen people at Wayland Town meeting. And then we would gradually expand that, and then maybe a couple other towns would pitch in. We would do this iteratively, no matter what the law said, because it doesn't work to deploy it simultaneously to 250 towns. So how is that fair to the disabled person in one of the towns that has to wait? Well, at least we got started. If we aren't allowed to get started, they will never be allowed to participate, never be able to participate because of their disability. So letting us start is the only way to get to the point where all of those disabled people will be able to participate in their town meeting. The sooner we start, the sooner we'll get there.
Thank you. Remember a few years ago when we all used to raise our hands and get dirty looks?
I'd
Or be
like to
told-
go
or
back
be
to
told to
there.
sit-
There was accountability.
Or be
I'm
told to
old
sit
school. There
down.
was
Lauren?
accountability.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to say a couple things to Tom's question. I think there has been, I work with the State Elections Division a lot. I think there has been concern from that office or the Secretary's office that there are security issues. We all know that there are security issues with elections generally, and I think that has been an issue, that at least is worth discussion. I do think the Secretary will need to be convinced in order for it to receive the kind of overwhelming support in the legislature that I think it might take to get this to happen. The second thing is I want to point out the clerk raising this equity and fairness issue is something I also have heard, discussed in connection with this, that there may be only some towns that are capable of providing this as an option, and that is inherently unfair. So I think that's something, we'll see. I agree, you need to start somewhere. But I think that's part of the reason why we've seen a lot of the individual towns that have requested this, their home rule petitions, not go forward because of that. The other thing is, ultimately, in order to figure out kind of the way to get this done. I heard Dave say we, and I think that's really going to be an issue. I think the moderators are going to want to weigh in. I think select boards are going to want to weigh in. And I think voters are. And so, kind of getting this to a working level where it can be, available just as kind of a general option to towns is going to take a while. But it's always good to start a conversation and to start thinking about these things. And I think just listening to the questions that the select board had, kind of sheds a light on the scope of issues that that the town would have to consider if this were to become an option.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
This is Dave. The ultimate evolution of this, if we're allowed to proceed, is that everybody at town meeting, whether they're local or remote, is using a tablet or a handset. And most people in the United States have a smartphone, like 91%. So instead of having to rent smartphones, everybody just bring their own, and they'll have a better user interface than what they have now. If you go online, there are now 50 companies that do web-based voting. If you ask for web-based voting for 1,000 people for a couple nights, the price is under $1,000. So the cost of remote participation over time is going to be significantly less than what we're all paying now for dedicated handsets for on-premises wireless electronic voting. And the usability will be significantly greater. So again, I think that this is a process. It won't be that way right out of the gate. We'll have to develop something, prove that it works, demonstrate that it works, get the economies of scale moving, as they always do with software that's successful. But the end result of this will be a lot more accessible to voters than even what we have today.
Brooke?
This has been really interesting, but I feel like we're sort of at the end of the road in terms of what we're going to talk about tonight, to be honest with you. I think I would be interested in two things. What are the opportunities should this community tell the select board that they want us to be on the leading edge of this? in some way, and whether that's having another agenda, having this on the agenda at a later date and taking some public input and direction. And then what would our participation in trying to move this effort forward look like specifically? And David, I want you to ask that tonight, but maybe a summary of what are the things that this select board could approve to move forward on if the community gave us an indication that they want us to lead versus follow on this effort. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that we can circle back to that and have it on another agenda potentially. Thank you, Dave. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you for doing this for me.
My pleasure.
Have a nice
Thank you,
evening.
Dave.
Okay, next up, we have the fire department with an update on new fire engine number 5, replacing fire engine number 7.
Hello.
Good
Nicholas
evening.
Lucido, Deputy Fire Chief. Just an update on where we are at with our new engine that's in process. It started construction late fall, and we're pretty much right at the halfway point. So what we did is we had to go out to the factory to have a look at it, which was a great opportunity to do that. So what we did is we were fortunate enough, DPW Director Drew Patnode and the Central Fleet Manager Nick Torres allowed us to steal Pete McCall for a few days. And Pete actually came out to the factory with us to look at the engine, which was very enlightening for us because he's the mechanic that will be working on that vehicle for the most part. And so allowing him to see a vehicle that was in production that he knows he will be working on gave him insight into how things are built and then how we could do things better to make it more streamlined for maintenance and also hopefully cheaper in the long run. So there's a few things that we've put into the vehicle from the start because we wanted it to be useful for Nantucket and our needs. So the goal was to build a versatile platform that was going to allow us to kind of allow this unit to respond to all hazards. And also as a result, we're trying to kind of thin the fleet out a little bit. And so by getting this new vehicle, it's going to allow us to kind of reduce the number of apparatus we have, which ultimately is also going to help us reduce maintenance costs. So there are things that are built into it that we do think is going to be great. The frame is galvanized. It's going to definitely help with corrosion. It has an auto lube system that's really going to help keep the vehicle rolling smoothly and really cut down on maintenance for it. But yeah, so we're very pleased with it. The goal is to have it completed, we think, in mid to late June. And then hopefully we'll take delivery in the fall. And by that time, we'll also have the other engine just starting out as well. So things are going well with it. We're looking forward to getting it. We do think it's going to serve the community quite well. And we're very excited that our membership had a really good, a good role in making sure that the vehicle was going to be appropriate for our needs. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next up, we have a request for review and potential approval of amendments to the Select Board's committee appointment process.
Thank you. I put all the information in your AIS in your packet. So basically there are 2 proposed amendments. One that just changes the advertising and the second that just allows an earlier date to make appointments. So I don't know if you have any questions.
I don't, it makes sense. I'd move approval.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon,
Aye.
Matt Fee,
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5
Thank
to
you.
0. Next up, we have Select Board reports and comments. Review of proposal for new island home bids in connection with Article 11 of the May 4th, 2026 annual town meeting.
Thank you, Erica. So before you, you have a comparison from last year's bid for the GMP that was brought to town meeting and unfortunately didn't pass at the annual town meeting, but did pass at the ballot. And then on the second column is the 2026 project cost based on the most recent GMP that we received. I will tell you that it's pretty close to being the final numbers as we're going through this. There is some small final review of the entire GMP going on, but it likely is not going to move the numbers very much. There's been a review since last week, which did move some cost out.
primarily around some of the allowances, and we were able also to take down the builder's risk insurance by a few $100,000. So the entire group, John Lemieux is online, Craig Piper, Rick Sears, we've all been working hard and talking about this and understanding the GMP proposal and trying to get it as close and as final as possible as we move towards town meeting. So in the slide before you, the new proposed construction total is $94,321,000. The housing component, which does include moving the houses off of the Sherburne Common site, the construction of the new houses, and the put options that were negotiated as part of the agreement with Sherburne Commons, has slightly increased to $14,326,000. Designer OPM survey, geotech testing, and other costs, a slight increase to $12,814,000. Medical equipment, FF&E, and IT and other costs increased to $3.7 million in this. Contingency was where we saw kind of the biggest reduction from 10.1 million to 6,036,000, primarily because we're not accounting for and do not have to anticipate accounting for any tariff contingency. That was a very large part of that $10 million last year. So the total project cost with the current GMP that we have is $137,310,000. If everybody remembers, at the Article 11 of the 2022 annual town meeting appropriated $8,500,000 towards the project. We're proposing using originally, in the original Article 11, we proposed using $7 million of retained earnings. The goal is to keep the proposed borrowing in that warrant article at the $119 million that was in Article 11. And in order to do that, we're proposing in Article 4, there's a $500,000 offset from sewer from the housing revolver to help offset some of the cost of the move from Sherburne Commons to Hillside. And then we're proposing the rest would come from Island Home retained earnings, which was certified last year on July 1st at a little over 13 million. So they do have enough coverage to be able to contribute that, to be able to keep the proposed borrowing that was in Article 11 at $119 million. So I'm happy to entertain questions from the board. And again, if it's something that I can't answer, John Lemieux is online from Vertex, our OPM. Craig Piper from our design team at SMRT is here, and Rick Sears, the deputy town manager, is also here. So
Thank you, Brian. Questions? Comments?
I think strategically it's smart to keep it at 119. I think that's, it didn't go from 119 to 139. So I think that makes a lot of sense.
I mean, it is costing more. We're just using reserve money to offset that increased cost, and none of which should be surprising to anyone. A year later, it always costs more. So
it did. I think it was good that we came in very close to what both Vertex and SMRT thought this was going to come in at, based on what they had seen and their experience in the market. So I think we're happy that it was relatively close. And I would point out this is the GMP this year that when we went out to bid for this is exactly the same project that was proposed last year. There were no changes as directed by the board. So it's exactly the same that was bid out.
That's interesting. The contingency dropping by 4 million. The increase is really about $1.7 million. And you take that, that's where you get it. It's interesting.
I mean, I find it encouraging that it didn't go up like 10%. It's a smaller increase, which is good for other projects, maybe.
We hope.
Okay, well, we know what we're going to town meeting with.
So no technical amendments.
There is going to be, we do need a technical amendment because the total construction, if you take the 137,310 minus 8.5, it's about 100, just under 129 million. So we're going to have to raise the 126, and simultaneously we'll raise the retained earnings by the amount necessary to keep it at 119 million. And I will have that to you tomorrow morning. Can I make one other comment, Madam Chair, before we move on? First of all, I want to thank the board for the comments tonight. I certainly appreciate them. I think we've accomplished a lot of great things collectively between the board and in support of what we've tried to do in my role as Director of Municipal Finance. But I also want to thank the town manager. The one thing I remember when we started down the road in 2017, I went into her office and said, our auditors think we can get to AAA. And I think she kind of smiled and said, good luck. But we accomplished it with her support and the team in finance. And it has truly been a privilege to be able to be the director of municipal finance for the last 12 years in the town. So I want to thank everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
There are no questions from the public. We'll move on to the next agenda item.
That just made me sad. I'm not
I think
supposed to.
everyone's a little choked up.
That's not supposed to be me.
Oh, Malcolm. Malcolm, you need to unmute.
Thank you.
Oh,
no,
you
it's
can't.
also
Now you're unmuted.
All right. No, I'm sad too, because, I've been in a lot of organizations over my life, and I think Brian was just phenomenal. So it's going to be hard to replace him. Good luck.
Not your problem.
I know. I'm retiring, for the third time. So,
Thanks, Malcolm.
all right.
Okay, next up, we have a request for approval of a draft license terms with Sconset Beach Preservation Fund, SPPF, for use of town-owned property along Baxter Road, Sconset Bluff for erosion control project. This was continued from April 1st, 2026 for a few changes, and this ties into the public comment follow-up that we had earlier.
So,
Good evening, Vicky.
Madam Chair, we do have Vicky Marsh on, and Vince Murphy, our sustainability programs manager. There's information in your packet. At the April 1st meeting, there was some feedback that came from the public and board members about the proposed license terms. At the time, we have since met internally to review those and met and forwarded our some proposed revisions to SBPF, and those include modifications as to adding language that the conditions of the license terms must be satisfied prior to final execution of the license. So this would be, these are license terms that aren't signed off on yet until the appropriate time. Stronger language requiring escrow agreements to be in place prior to construction, an additional escrow agreement for repairs to roads impacted by sand deliveries. There was the annual review and reporting requirement directly to the board. Easements that SBPF is responsible for obtaining must run with the land and be recorded. So all of that has been worked into revised license terms, which are in your packet.
Do you want those up at all, or do you need them, or are you just gonna let people talk?
If people want to look at them, we can bring it up, but otherwise, I think we're just ready for any questions that the board members or others might have.
I have a process question. So we have an article at town meeting, Article 73, that authorizes us to execute this license. And we're now honing in on a draft license. It's a few weeks out from town meeting. Some of the comments that we got that were responded to in the response to public comment from the last meeting were that the warrant article language is quite broad, but we now have a sort of a proposal that obviously would be much narrower than that broad authorization. And the question I think I heard at the meeting was, what's to stop us from doing something dramatically different from what's in this draft? So it's a little bit of that question, right? Like because I think town meeting is going to want to know, is this what you're doing, or are you giving yourself authority to do this or something completely different? And how does that work process wise? And I'm not sure who would be the appropriate person to answer that question.
Vicky has her hand up. Vicky Marsh.
Good evening, Madam Chair. Through you to Brooke. I the process for the Article 73 is for just voting on the actual authority to allow for a license or a lease of the property in question. It is not authority to actually go ahead and sign this particular document. You can, after the town meeting, if it's approved, if that is approved, go ahead and negotiate a final version of a license agreement. You have the basis here right now for some license terms that have been agreed upon between you and SBPF. So that certainly can provide a basis for that, but you're not bound necessarily to that particular agreement based just on Article 73's vote. Does that address your question, Brooke?
It addresses my question. I'm not sure that it resolves the community concern that was expressed.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I think you could look at it two ways. We could sign this and then this would be it, or we could, but then we'd sort of, in my mind, we're jumping the gun a bit. I think we go to town meeting. Our intent is to sign this if town meeting passes it. I think town meeting is, so I think we do want to sign it. I think there were questions, and what we did after the meeting was tightened up a lot of points. And so so one of the last questions from Deanne was sort of, we took that to heart and said, okay, what else do we have to do to tighten this up? And there were some good comments. And, I think that gave us a better product, honestly, than we had, in the draft that we presented. And so, I think that the goal is to, is sort of to, you say, do you trust? So one of the questions, do you trust? Well, we can trust or not, because we have a document that that has a lot of, and Vince will probably explain it better, but it has a lot of teeth to it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, and that some interests align that we've had concerns, the town has had concerns with, and that they've had concerns with. And so I think that's, I think there are some, sort of misnomers out there that the alternative access is ready to go tomorrow. The emergency access is ready to go tomorrow. Neither are. We've still got years. And so we've, and SBPF has work they need to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to be smart and moving forward. And I think that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you, Matt. Vince?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add a bit more context. So this has a lot new, all of the teeth, and gives all of the, sorry, I should go back up. Vince Murphy, Natural Resources Department, on this one, just to be clear. So this has a lot more teeth in it. This is a lot stronger. It gives the town far, far more power, and it gives us everything we need. But we also have to think about the iterative process that got us here. So this is in response to the fact that SBPF want to use Town Beach because they've gone through a process of partnering with the town, developing designs, going through the Conservation Commission and all of the other permitting requirements to get to here. If there were to be, and now it's approved by the Conservation Commission and still under appeal. We all have that understanding. But if there were to be any other things that were to come from this, any amendments, they'd all have to go through the iterative process again and come back to the select board for permission to go through that. And then that would open up the terms of the license again. So it's quite specific to what has been approved by Concom, and it has been gone through a hell of a design process.
Yeah, I didn't mean to undermine anything at all. I mean, I think this board has pretty consistently understood the need to do erosion control on the bluff, because there are risks, serious financial risks to the community in terms of our requirement to provide utilities to the properties. And so we're balancing those needs for the community in a way that someone who doesn't think they're a good idea just can say they don't think it's a good idea, but it's way more complicated than that. I do think this license agreement is good. I think it's got a lot more accountability. It's got a lot more enforceability. It's got money in the bank to cover the things that should our SBPF not follow through. on commitments here. So, you know, I think we're in a good place, and I think we should authorize this license. But I asked my question almost rhetorically to make sure that the community understands. And I think the answer earlier to the questions about why the language is the way it is, it's sort of standard warrant article language for this type of license. And I just wanted to clarify the process a little bit. But I am in favor of moving forward on this for all the reasons we've stated every time we have the debate about whether this project, we should partner with SBPF, whether this project should move forward. There are significant compelling reasons to move the project forward, and that's why we're doing it, but with greater controls and authority than we've ever had.
Lauren Goldberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to, it is very difficult to negotiate a lease and, or a license, you know, to get every single aspect of it, to a certain point, and then have town meeting vote on that, and then find out later there are certain changes that need to be made. Typically, town meeting does not negotiate the terms of a license or a lease, you know, on town meeting floor. And I just want to point out that the discussions that you've had would also need to be had if any changes were going to be made, and that would also be in a context, you know, where there would be discussion. So there are some limitations, in my opinion, on what the town, what the breadth of authority is. But if it's too restrictive, which is what would happen if there was a vote on an actual agreement, it could impede the town's ability to sign the license to move forward. So this is, you know, in our opinion, it's an appropriate article and an appropriate action for a town meeting to take to authorize it generally, and then for the select board as the executive to decide on the exact terms and conditions to sign off on.
Thank you. I mean, I think the reason that we went back and forth about bringing it forward at this town meeting is that we wanted to get to this place where we had a really strong, detailed framework of the direction that this board as a collective and the subcommittee were going in, and that SPPF was willing to agree to. And I think we're there, and we can move this forward at town meeting, and this may not be a forever solution, but it's something that really needs to happen now with the extent of the erosion, and even more that we've seen this winter after some of the significant storms. Meredith online, Meredith Moldenhauer.
Hi, good evening, Chair, and through you, just to respond to Brooke's question, Meredith Moldenhauer on behalf of the Wisconsin Beach Preservation Fund. We obviously have appreciated all the hard work working with Vince, Libby, and Matt to negotiate these terms. We obviously do agree to the revisions that occurred following the last select board meeting, and do feel similarly to the comments made that this would, you know, lock in a formal license agreement that does address the responsibilities and requires us, SBPF, and not the town, to fund the construction, the maintenance, the mitigation, removal, and road impacts. And that, you know, the license agreement, you know, does not provide any requirements for any taxpayer funding. And we obviously just want to ensure that the select board and the residents acknowledge that and understand that kind of as we're discussing this evening. Thank you for all your work.
Thank you, Meredith. Burton Ballkind.
Thank you, Don. Burton Ballkind, Nantucket Coastal Conservancy. I would have a question, first of all. If there are any revisions made after a town meeting positive vote, would it be like a select board meeting where there'd be a open meeting where we'd be able to discuss it, or would it be more of like a closed door, you guys do an executive session? I'm just trying to understand, like what Brooke was saying, trying to understand the mechanics of how that would work. That's my first question.
Okay.
Madam Chair, subject to Attorney Marsh or Goldberg, the final license will need to come back to the board for execution. So that would reflect any other changes, and I'm sure they could be discussed at that time.
I think his question was whether it would be open session.
Ultimately, the license will need to be approved in open session, and I have no idea what revisions we might even be talking about at this point, but if there were some, I'm sure they would originate here somewhere at a board meeting. There would probably be some internal meetings between the staff that has been working on this and SBPF to work out language, and then it would come back to the board. So I think there would be an open process.
Yeah,
Yes.
and I would say the process that we did here was very helpful. I think we would probably follow that again.
Thank you. That's very clear. And I wanted to say thank you to the board, to SBPF, to Vince, and this has definitely been a process where I felt like you listened to all sides, and I really appreciate that. And you definitely took comments and put it into this. Not exactly 100% sure. I'm going to go back and read more on it, but I do want to thank you for your time. And then I had another question, but it's out of mind right now, so I'm not going to take up your time trying to remember it. I'll email if it comes back to me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Malcolm?
Yes, Madam Chair. I have to tell you, I'm still skeptical. I just don't see this project as being successful in the long run. I'm not comfortable with it. I think at some point we're going to have to say, no, everyone did a good job. Everyone was open, but it's time to stop. I'm comfortable that you're going to, a year from now, the select board will review it. I will vote for it, but I'm uncomfortable doing it. I'll just tell you that. As long as it's reviewed yearly, but at some point, you're all going to have to say enough is enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Brooke?
So do we need action tonight? Do we need to sort of lend our support to this version or this draft version, obviously subject to a final version that will come back to us for approval?
The request is for the approval of the draft. If
Yeah,
you want to make
so
that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Right.
All those in favor by roll call? Brooke Moore?
Aye.
Tom Dixon?
Aye.
Matt Fay?
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb?
Yes.
Don Hill? Aye.
Vicky was going to say something.
Oh, well, that carries unanimously 5-0. Vicky, did you have anything as a follow-up?
No, I was just going to add at the time, Madam Chair, that you would take a vote on the approval of the license terms before you. And then once you see how Article 73 is voted on, if we can have a final version of a license, then you could go ahead and either finalize the version that based upon the terms that we already have.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Tom.
And Matt, thank you for taking the time to work on this for behalf
Thank
of the
you.
board. It's a lot of work, this, DPW work group, et cetera. And, I
Thank you.
appreciate that from all the board members.
Thank you all. Next up, this will be to Malcolm. We have an update on the investigation of the African Meeting House vandalism.
Yes, let me, I have a note from the investigator and I will read it, highlights from it, and then send it to you and the work group tomorrow. Okay, the DA remember we were talking about the DA with getting information from. DA came through with approximately 80 plus individual pieces to review. Furthermore, they did their own review and made a statement. They looked at everything. They thought they did a good job, but they had to remind us all that the statute of limitations is actually passed. The Massachusetts State Police has yet to produce that which we have asked, though a lot of the information the DA filed are memos from the Massachusetts State Police. And the thing you're all wanting is the report date. With the new discovery, it's going to take some reconciling comparison between the two files Even with a quick glance, I see new information not previously provided, so I need to see what is in there. That's the last from the investigator.
All right. Thank you, Malcolm. Any questions? Okay, next up, we have an announcement of the Select Board Executive Session vote taken on April 2nd, 2026, pursuant to the request of the Zoning Board of Appeals to authorize an appeal of the Housing Appeals Committee, HAC, proposed decision to approve the Surfside Crossing 40B housing development with conditions once it becomes final. Okay. Next up, do we have any committee reports? Okay, seeing none. We have some traffic safety recommendations, and Mike Burns is online this evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair.
Hi, Mike. You can want to go through them?
Sure. I'll let this let Erica pop up the screen first before I get started. And the first item is at 13 Washington Street. This is removal
Westchester.
excuse me, Westchester Street. My eyes are getting a little blurry looking at the screen. 13 Westchester Street, removal of 1 2-hour parking space at 13 Westchester Street. The applicant would be required to relocate an existing fire hydrant that's in the path of the proposed driveway. Relocate that fire hydrant to the west side of the proposed driveway and east of a utility pole.
Matt?
Yeah, Mike, was there any discussion about having them access from the driveway road just to the left? The way I've walked by there with the dogs. I've seen it's like a double, they're building a double 2-car parking lot that could, just come in. It could come in just down that, just to the right, and then we wouldn't lose any parking spaces, and we'd keep, instead of seeing vehicles, we'd see, we'd see the plantings and the bushes that have been there for, 200 years. So was there any discussion of that?
We were basically acting on the plan that was approved by other boards and the application that was submitted to the DPW for a curb cut. So we didn't get into offering design suggestions. And
Rest of the board? Questions, comments? I see someone coming to the mic. Campbell?
Mike Campbell Sutton again. So to follow up on Matt's question, I believe this is in the ROH, is it not? So it would seem to me that there should at least have been a run by the historical commission to see the appropriateness of this, because one of the things I've noticed is that this idea that I want my own driveway is we're losing the historic context of our streetscapes. And I could point to Fair Street as one of the streets that this has happened on. And there's a cross street between, I believe it's between Fair and Orange Street, where they have the buoy on the house. That one, we now have some curb cuts in there that are pretty ridiculous, but it really has changed the character. And so I have a little concern about that, especially if they have the capacity on their own property to create their own driveway without interrupting the sidewalk, the flow of pedestrian traffic, and like that. So thank you.
Matt?
It may not be their property. It might.
It's not.
Yeah, it's leading to the others in the back, but it's also, if I were one of those neighbors, I would share the first 10 feet of that, because I would rather have those on-street parking spaces available for people visiting my house. And so, so it kind of is one of those things that works for everybody and it works for the character of the island. So I would like to have seen that. I'm voting against it because I feel as though we are turning an urban environment into trying to turn it into a suburban environment. We're losing all of our yards and all of the things that made downtown great because people want to park their cars. So I just, I'm against it. Thank you.
Madam Chair, if I could,
Yes, Mike.
I will say this is based on an HDC approval. I have a certificate number here and everything. So this has been reviewed by the HDC and approved by the HDC and was followed up with the application to the DPW. So there is a 2 parking spaces within the driveway. The ask is to remove 1 parking space. It falls in line with the policy that if there's a net gain in parking, that traffic safety generally supports it and provides a positive recommendation to the select board.
Okay. That's a pleasure of the board.
I'll move to deny it.
Second. For discussion.
Okay.
Yeah, I would like to see an attempt to, you know, like I've said, I'd like to see an attempt to come in from the side and keep that. I'd like to see the bushes remain there. I don't think so anyway, I just, and I would like I would like traffic safety to we should review whether this policy makes sense. When you see the impact of it all through the downtown, and maybe there's not very many left, that they're all done, and we should just, and we'll vote, the majority will vote to throw up their hands but I don't know.
Madam Chair, can I just
Yeah.
say, to piggyback on what what Mr. V just said, you are actually going to be reviewing 3 items from your December 3rd meeting where you had the exact same conversation and there's been no traction on the select board reviewing that policy. So we brought them back. So just FYI.
Okay, well, it sounds like we need to agenda the policy. I don't actually see the plan of the driveway here. I see the removal of the parking space, but I'm not seeing the HDC approved plan, which I would like to.
Yeah, we don't usually give you those. We just give
Yeah.
you a graphic to make it easier to
I feel like
review.
we used to get them, but maybe not.
It's basically see where the.
And I mean, I have a question on whether they could come in from the rear too. I think, but
I believe they used to, but I believe it's under separate ownership now. They've separated the property.
Brooke?
So I'm the one who asked to table the ones in December because I have the same concerns about a public's. I understand the net gain of parking, right? 2 for 1, but they're not the same to me. It's 2 private spaces in exchange for a publicly accessible space to anyone in the neighborhood. I wish I'd pushed to get the policy discussion addressed before another one has come forward. I'm torn here, honestly. I'm still sort of stuck.
I mean, on the motion, I'm not ready to vote for a denial, but I would be supportive of tabling this for this discussion and revisit of the policy, because I do understand the concerns with, I think maybe the policy should be something like, we'll only consider it if it's creating 2 parking spaces, but we may not.
Right.
Because I think that there's sort of it's out there that
Just
this is
intercepted a
approvable.
phone call. Could you get the TV on? Could you?
Oh, people assume that this is going to be okay based on what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
So we really need to actually take an action.
I would accept a motion to table as opposed to deny, but I think we need to really delve into it.
And maybe they could also, discuss, I believe that 15 and 17 are it's like a condoed lot. And maybe there would be an ability to work with them.
Right. Do you see there's sort of a half shape, like a pie shape there? That's kind of where the 2 cars are coming in now. And they'd be side by side coming in, over the parking spaces. So I'm looking at it saying, well, why not come in from the side and leave the bushes,
Yeah.
leave the streetscape?
I understand. Amy, did you have a comment before
Yeah,
we?
just real quick. Sorry, Amy Eldridge. In regards to parking loss on Easton Street, which is not that far from 13 Westchester, it seems kind of like a tight area. We've lost a lot of parking. We lost what, 6 spots maybe on the harbor house side, for reverse truck routes and just easy access of people not getting their car sideswiped. Seems like an additional parking space in that same kind of area to lose. Seems kind of an important spot. So thanks.
Okay, Matt, were you revising your motion or?
Yeah, I'll revise it and table. So that for have an opportunity to talk about the policy.
Tom?
I'll resecond that.
Okay. Is everyone comfortable with that, Malcolm?
Yes.
All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. So we need to I know we can't do this on the 29th, but probably right after that.
Well, there's going to be multiple because you still have the 3 from December. So we're going to have to go through and you'll just table the others too.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm assuming.
Yep.
So this is, Mike, this is the only one that's not the same, right? This is just the tour van parking.
Correct. I think the third item, I'll just gloss over that and we'll go to the fourth item. If we're ready for the next item, this is Washington Street at Salem Street, designation of 3 on-street parking spaces along Washington Street for tour buses or tour vans only. Spaces accommodate 2 of these tour vans. And this was previously approved in 2025. So the dates there are shown on the map. It's from May 26th through October 23rd. That's when those spaces will be needed. And then they'll be repurposed for public parking after October 23rd.
Okay. Does anybody have questions on this? Is there a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor by roll call, Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Malcolm McNabb.
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The next is 10 York Street. So I'll just skip over that and go to the item number 4, 2 Cabot Lane. This is not related to a new driveway, but rather allowing someone to access their driveway. This is a request to remove 1 on-street parking space in front of 2 Cabot Lane to improve access to the driveway. And I think this was continued from your December meeting, not because of the policy, but because of a site viewing opportunity.
Board members.
Madam Chair, I'm a little hesitant on this one because as Matt has pointed out many times, like cars have gotten bigger and it's et cetera, but I don't know. I want to see what you all think, but I'm not 100% convinced it's necessary.
May I just say something? I
Yes.
think one of the issues here too, when I spoke to this woman, was when you're pulling out of your driveway and say, for instance, a giant van is parked right there, you can't always see in this area, Nantucket Ave, Cabot Lane, there's a lot of walkers, there's no sidewalks. So, and there's a lot of biking kids. You can't always see them while you're pulling out. So it was a safety factor too.
Matt.
Yeah, this is another area. I live up here, walk around here a lot. I think the size of the vehicles, as Tom mentioned, is a big problem in a lot of these areas. And if you look at the picture on here, people are putting stones up and they're putting stones in the ground with grass between them like this. So they're putting stones so people don't park on it. Everywhere that people can is parked on. And I think, in some cases that's probably okay. We should design for it and sort of design the streetscape for it. But yeah, I don't know the answer here. If we could say cars of a certain size, we'd be all set. But, that we would have to delineate it differently, and we aren't willing to do that. We don't have a sidewalk here, but all the other pictures, everywhere we look, there's cars parked on the sidewalk. So, so we sort of, anyway, I'm not sure what to do here. I do think the house to the right, I think some of these have expanded their driveways. There was 1 or 2 spaces and now there's, stat with 4 there has happened here. We probably, maybe we've all approved it. I can't remember, but
Oh, Campbell,
Oh,
sorry.
hi, Campbell Sutton again. So I just have a question on this because it seems like a request by a summer resident for a summer period of time. And I, along with a lot of people, work in this area, but it seems like when you take out something like this, it just puts more pressure on Cliff Road. And we couldn't have more trucks and cars parked on the sidewalk on that section of Cliff Road, which is in itself really dangerous. But I'm just wondering if there's a way to have like a seasonal thing like we have downtown with parking where it's, the tour bus piece that we just had. Ideally, it would be a car size thing, but if it is the only spot on the street where a car could park, I'm not sure where their guests park here, but maybe they don't have them. Okay, thanks.
There's not a whole lot of on-street parking on this street. I mean, I guess kind of my question is the driveway's been there. Like, why now? What's changed? What has the driveway changed? Yeah.
yeah, some of the ownership there has changed.
And then, sometimes you have a parking space and you need to get a car that fits in that parking space and not a car that doesn't, that can get in and out. Like there are so many tricky driveways on this island. I don't think we should be eliminating on-street parking spaces for that. Sorry,
Yeah.
Brooke.
And the other problem is, these folks need to get their lawns mowed and their gardeners, and where are these people going to park if the owner's cars are in the driveway? Like, I'm inclined, I'm going to make a motion to deny this request, actually.
I'll second it.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I'll give a little context. Again, I know the area pretty well. 3 a.m, there's no cars parked anywhere from town all the way out to Lincoln Circle. There's no cars parked on any sidewalks, no cars anywhere. Come 7, 6, 7, 8 in the morning, it fills up. In the summer, it's now filling up all the way to Lincoln Circle. It's filling up, down Westchester, and people are having to put signs up, a good half mile, 3/4 of a mile from town. And so this is, there's so much demand for the parking that it spills out all the way out here. I purposely asked my employees not to park on this specific street because the neighbors have such trouble. And I asked them to park a street over, or there's a dirt area, and we've only have 2 or 3 cars typically in the summer because of the people we hire. But it's, when they park here, there's a lot of complaining because, oh, you're look exactly what you're saying, Brooke. You're taking the spot where where the service people have to park. Where are they, And so, and the other thing that I've done up here this winter, I gave the use of the Something Natural parking lot all winter to some of the construction because there was no room on the street for as much construction as was happening. And so, it really is an issue. So
Matt, is that an argument to eliminate the parking space or to keep it? Because
I think we keep it. I think we deny this and keep it.
Can
But
we-
I think it's an argument for getting a parking commission and putting a price on parking and finding a way to start to, wrestle with this beast that's like the third rail. I think that this is, because we as a community, and I've been here for 20 years, I haven't pushed hard enough on it. We have allowed this to happen. We at one point we had 2 roads. It was like York and somewhere else, Academy Lane, I think, Academy Hill, where you had to park you couldn't park on any other sidewalks. And we voted this. It came from traffic safety after they measured every street in town. And we had 2 streets that you were allowed to park one tire up on the curb, and you had to let a bicycle,
Baby carriage.
baby carriage, thank you, pass in between. And that was the rule, and that was what was supposed to happen. And then and now it's, now it's like, well, we just let them park everywhere. Well, how can we enforce that? We can't have some road, some sidewalks you park on and some you can't. So we just let them park on all of them. And it's illegal, and we shouldn't be allowing it. And people would adapt. People would drive. I'm sorry, I'm on my soapbox. They would drive smaller cars. They would adapt.
No, my concern is that we have emotion.
I understand. I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't help it because I just.
Over.
All right, I'm
the
apologizing for having to deal with this. So let's get it over. Sorry.
No, that's okay. All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore.
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And another parking issue. This is bringing back another issue that was tabled at the December meeting, the removal of 6 on-street parking spaces. And we are showing option. Could you cycle to the next sheet, Erica, please? Thank you. We are recommending option 2. Traffic safety is recommending option 2. I think we showed you option 1 just for demonstrative purposes of that there was another option, but this removes fewer spaces. This would remove option 2 would remove 6 on-street parking spaces between Pleasant Street and Pine Street to accommodate emergency response vehicles, and relocate 1 accessible parking space to the north side of Summer Street between Trader Lane and Pine Street. Based on the input from the board at the December meeting, staff did meet with Senior Pastor Derek Worthington of the Summer Street Church. And he does request that these 6 on-street parking spaces be designated as 2-hour parking on Sundays only. Traffic safety doesn't necessarily support the request. So we still embrace option 2, but that was the outcome of staff's coordination with the Summer Street Church, is they are asking for a 2-hour parking be allowed only on Sundays.
Oh, an exception. Okay.
And how does that differ, Mike? The 2-hour versus what is it? It's 2-hour already or no?
It's 2-hour right now. Staff is asking that 6 parking spaces be removed. The church is asking that you allow those parking spaces to exist only on Sundays.
I got it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
I get it now.
the parking spaces are not eliminated on Sundays.
Correct.
So it's sort of like a loading zone that's only available during church services.
Correct, Madam Chair. And I'm not sure if Chief Casper is present, but we did
not.
discuss an enforcement concern with just ensuring that happens and is abided by the public. So that was the concern. That's why traffic safety didn't necessarily support the request.
Campbell?
Hi, Campbell Sutton again. So I'm exceedingly concerned about this. So, but I have a question about it. So if there's no on-street parking, many of these houses do not have driveways. So they utilize on-street parking. Is it that they can get a sticker that says that they can park where you can't park? Or do all of these people now put pressure on the entire other areas? Again, we're in a congested area, and you can't get away from that. And there isn't anywhere you can push this parking that's going to create safety. It creates it here, takes it away somewhere else. I believe on Pleasant Street, right there at the corner of Summer and Pleasant. I believe several, I'm going to go with 2 right off, and maybe it's at High Street that they were removed. So and you can see from looking here that there are not a lot of driveways. There's the Summer Street Church and St. Paul's. I don't know what to say other than 6 downtown along this street with houses, all those houses are going to want curb cuts in order to put driveways in so that they can park. And I think Matt's right. I think we need someone to have a bird's eye view of downtown and the parking and how that can go. So thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Erica.
I just want to note that this request came from a property owner who had, there was some sort of medical thing or a fire emergency thing, and they were concerned that a fire truck couldn't get down there. So the first thing we did was have the fire department go down with a truck and try to drive down when there's parking on both sides. They could not make it. That is why it came to traffic safety, so that they could decide whether or not it was safe and that there was access for public emergency vehicles, which there is not. And that's another reason why traffic safety wasn't in favor of this Sunday parking only too, because what if there's a fire on that day and there's cars on both sides? That is the reason for the removal. We had extensive discussions about this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, is that this was a request for public safety. And unfortunately, eliminating parking spaces is not great, but I don't want to create a safety issue.
Just to speak to that, many of the downtown streets that have parking, whether it's, well, maybe Fair Street, not at the narrow end of Fair Street, maybe at the wider end, but there are a lot of streets. So somehow we need to get emergency vehicles that can maybe be a little more streamlined, but we can, you will, I get it. But it just seems, it seems like there should be some other options for that. Because every street, you look at Trader's Lane right there. That's a difficult one to get down just as a single car. That end of Pine Street as well. So I'm not sure where all these cars are going to go, but thank you.
Amy?
Hi, Amy Eldridge. I totally understand the public safety aspect. But my concern is, especially with the church, I mean, they're donating 3 or 4 nights a week for the warming place. They have staff that needs to man that. That's in the winter when it's freezing and it's cold. And I mean, there's a lot of things as church memberships kind of dwindle due to the economic climate of our island lately. So there's less members. A lot of these churches, especially in the core district, my church, the Methodist Church as well, work as a community center as well. So you've got, you know, the Congregational Church, that's really tight too. And they've figured out their parking and had to do a lot of rearranging. But I just think this is really important to see what the Summer Street Church is giving back to the community, and that there are people in there, not just on Sunday, but I understand the public safety aspect. But, and I believe one of these houses, actually their front door opens right onto the sidewalk. There's no room if somebody was to do what Matt has been talking about, park right up on the sidewalk. They may not even be able to get in and out of their house. So I get it, but there's got to be a compromise to taking 6. Is there a way to maybe try 4 and see how that works? And if that doesn't work, then we have to go to the worst case scenario. But it is a huge hit for the core district. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I'm going to take a stab at maybe a compromise and see what the board thinks. As Erica said, the traffic safety has reviewed this thoroughly. It seems like it came to us for very good reasons, and that something absolutely needs to be done. However, I am sympathetic to Pastor Worthington's request. Might we, if we were so inclined to approve this, option 2, to do a pilot on the church hours for 6 months or a year or something like that, whatever's appropriate, whatever traffic safety thinks might be appropriate, and then have the board revisit at such a time.
Not to belabor this, but I also want to bring up, so this was brought up by a resident. And then the fire department reviewed it with public safety vehicles. How many other places in the core district might a resident say, can you come review this and see if you can get a fire truck through under many parking conditions? Like, are we opening up a massive can of worms here of eliminating parking?
I'll answer that. Yes. The planners have
I
a
mean,
term
the
for it.
church has been here forever with all this parking.
They've got a name for it, zoning by fire truck. And it's, we can't, if the trucks get bigger, no offense, but if the trucks get bigger, we can't make these roads bigger. We can make our new roads bigger, and so that's the issue and this happens, it's not just Nantucket, this happens in a lot of old municipalities. You can't, so, and there, maybe you could take parking off, sidewalk off on one side and have one really good sidewalk and let parking be on one side if you were trying to redesign some of these areas. But you're not going to get parking you're not going to get, look, if you look at the picture of the vehicles here, you're not going to get vehicles that size parking on both sides of any street downtown. If we're allowing them to be that big and park wherever they want, there's no way you're going to be able to do it. So, you could see the VW Bug there. If you had VW Bug on both sides, you'd still get through. If you had VW Bugs on both sides of the road, if you had the small Toyota or Ford trucks that the landscapers used 25 years ago, they were energy efficient and they were fine. If you had those, we'd have no problem. And I think what's happened is we are trying to change the people who buy these houses and the people who work on them, they should be adapting their tools, their vehicles to our built downtown. We shouldn't be forced to change our built downtown to fit these things. In my opinion, it should be the other way around.
Can I ask the fire chief a question? Sorry, Mike. Yeah. So I'm thinking of a compromise, Mike, which would be to remove the two single spaces so that you can so that you have turning to get on the street, because you're not driving through here to Pine Street, are you? Turning right? That's seems impossible. Like past the church and turning right. It's really about getting.
I mean, obviously we want to be able to get to every address on the street.
Yeah.
But when we start looking at getting to the church is probably going to have the most life safety hazards.
Yeah.
Whether it's service or the warming shelter or whatever is going on. That's certainly why we didn't like the initial compromise, was because that's most likely when we got to get there. And so we want to be able to get to those people if they need help. I think it would just be incident specific on how we had to get into a specific part of the street, but
that's where I'd be inclined to go, maybe, is to just eliminate those two parking spaces so that at least 50% of the street is accessible by truck. It gets them halfway there, recognizing that they're not going to get realistically to every address on Nantucket given our roads and streets. And so, so improve the access, be able to get a fire truck at least halfway down the street in case of an emergency. And then I have the same thing at my church. People park in the turnaround all the time and I'm yelling at them. I'm like, if one of your members has a heart attack, your car's in the way, you're putting yourselves at risk, right? So the argument that we should allow it on, have it all there on Sunday. I think this is a way to start, see how it goes, see if you run into any incident specific problems, and then we go from there. How does that sound as a compromise?
It sounds good.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Tom?
Madam Chair, question, what about accommodating those for the church for 2 hours on Sunday?
No, we leave those spaces.
this would just be eliminating 2 parking spaces.
But still, the church would be theoretically losing 2 parking spots. Okay, I just want to make sure.
But my point, Tom, is that that is the time when you want access, when there's crowds in the building more than any time. So no,
No,
special
which will be
event-
very hard to
enforce, and people won't
And
know what to
every
do with
church,
it.
and then every church will have a request for 2-hour parking around them because it's an issue.
Yeah.
Of getting parking tickets.
I don't
It's-
think we
people-
ticket
and the-
on Sunday mornings, do we?
I always thought that, but there's no actual.
I know, but
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think they do.
I'm sorry, who has Tamara Jackson?
Tamara, you just need to unmute.
Okay, well, I'm just going to go to a vote on the motion. All those in favor of Brooke's motion, Malcolm McNabb?
Could you repeat the motion? It got a little confusing for me.
Yes, it's to eliminate 2 parking spaces.
Down, okay.
These 2 right off of Pleasant Street, Malcolm, if you can see the plan.
Yeah, I've got it. That's fine. That's where I was going. Yes, aye.
Brooke?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Don, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0. So we'll start there and see
Mhm.
how it goes.
Mhm.
And Mike, do we need to table the others? Where are we? Sorry.
So moved if we need to.
Yeah, you already tabled the first one, and then 10 York, you guys just said we'll table it.
Okay,
So
so we're
All right.
we're done. I just don't have it in front of me. Okay.
Good.
Anything else?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank
I have a
you.
story to tell, but I'll tell it next time about the shack wars, Nantucket shack wars. I'll tell the story next time.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Is there a second?
Smart. Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Malcolm McNabb,
Aye.
Brooke Moore,
Aye.
Tom Dixon.
Aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Don Hill, aye. That carries unanimously 5-0.
You dodged it. It's a select board story too.